So Dragon Ball Sparking Zero is less than 2 weeks away from the official release, and in fact, by the time this video comes out, we'll be very close to just 1 week away, which is honestly very exciting, because I know a lot of people have been waiting well over a decade for a sequel to the Sparking Meteor or Budokan Tenkaichi 3. So before we get into a little bit of the negative kind of side of things, I want to spread some positivity, so let me know what thing you guys are most excited for actually in terms of Dragon Ball Sparking Zero and its full release. But of course, with positives, there's actually negative aspects, and the game is not perfect, right? No game is actually ever going to be perfect, and that's kind of what I want to lean on. This game has been anticipated for such a long time. I think people have a mindset that this game is going to be perfect, or it's going to be straight up the best Dragon Ball game ever. And whether you do agree or disagree with that, I think the idea of this game being impervious to any criticism is not good. And that's something I've seen the community handle very badly. Criticism, right? Criticism to the game or the models or anything I've seen related to it. A lot of people kind of jump people for spreading their opinions on how the game could be improved. And I think that's actually just honestly crazy. And that's one of the main reasons I wanted to make this video, is because I want people to realize something. If you're watching this video, man, you have to realize that the game is going to have some places to always improve upon. Feedback is always very, very useful to the game, and there are people who are like, well, the game still needs a 1-day patch. You know, months ago people were like, oh, this isn't the final product, why are you giving criticism, the game's not done yet. And it kept getting pushed back. People kept moving the goal, and now again it's at the point where they're like, oh, there's gonna be a day 1 patch, it'll be okay, it might be fixed. And then they use that as a way to say, God, your criticism sucks, why are you criticizing this, oh my goodness, you're complaining so much, the game is not even its final product, right? It's just a thing that I find where instead of trying to take that feedback and understanding why someone's trying to say it, they come up with excuses about why their game isn't perfect just yet. And I think that's quite annoying actually to a lot of people who want the game to be good in their own view as well. Because at the end of the day, I think everyone deserves to be satisfied with this new Dragon Ball game, because so many of us have been looking forward to it. And like I said, there are things that have yet to be fixed, that some people were leaving some even detailed feedback about, that other people kind of pushed aside or didn't really try to bring as much attention to it because they're like, oh, it could be fixed later on, it's not the final product. And that's just not a good mindset to have. I think one big example for this is the fact that the character roster select screen still, to be completely honest, does not look good. I think that whilst I like the idea behind it in terms of the seamless transition into combat, there's a lot of things that could be better about it. I made a whole video talking about it, and you can go look in those comments. You'll see some of the comments are saying the exact same things I've said in this video. I looked through Twitter with people talking about the similar thing, and people have said the same thing. Oh, they said the roster look wasn't finalized, so it should be okay. You shouldn't have to complain about this, blah, 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 blah. Yeah, this is, you can probably tell from my own experience, I'm like, oh, that's kind of annoying. You could even see this as like a mini rant video if you want. That character select screen is super bloated. I think it's lifeless, to be honest with you. Like, it is just the character model flops down on the screen, then flops away. Like, he jumps down and then they jump back up. And there's so much you have to scroll through, especially with 182 characters. Now, for all I know, the character select screen could be fixed on day 1, right? We're not 100% sure about that. But I just think it's the general idea of pushing against people leaving feedback for stuff that could be even as important as this. That's the main issue, right? Rather than the feedback itself, whether it's necessary or not. I think pushing back on feedback like this is just quite bad. Another thing that I've seen people talk about is the models for the game. Now, the game is kind of weird, and I would agree with a lot of the criticism about this specific aspect. And the reason why it's weird about this is because there's a mix of the Shintani designs from Dragon Ball Super Broly, and then there's kind of also the mix of just the normal Dragon Ball Z designs or even the GT designs, where a lot of things end up clashing. Maybe less on the GT designs because they don't mix, but I think a good example that was brought up by a lot of people in the most recent few days is First Form Frieza. So you could see First Form Frieza, he has his Dragon Ball Super Broly design right there, right, where he has the Shintani kind of look to him. Looks pretty cool, right? But then you see that there's not really currently an option for his Dragon Ball Z design, at least from what we're aware of at this point. We saw that Bardock has an option from his Z clothing and Super clothing, but in terms of a model change for Frieza or even King Cold to be their like Z designs, that has not been shown, and we've likely seen a good majority of the costumes as well already in like the early gameplay footage provided to us by some of these content creators, right? So with all that being said, you have Shintani First Form Frieza, then, oh, I'm going to transform into my third form, or I'm going to transform into Final Form Frieza or something. And then you end up transforming, and then you see, oh, it's a huge shift where it's like Dragon Ball Z Frieza there. And it is kind of weird, right? You can even see full power Frieza looks a little odd as well. And I think that's just because of how the game kind of, like, was working with their models. Either way, I think that I saw criticism about that. And I'm like, you know what? I think that's fair, right? You know, people want their characters to look a certain way. But then there is a lot of negative responses to that of people saying, you're complaining. Oh my goodness, can't you just be happy with what you get? And again, I know that, you know, the internet is the internet at this point. But I think that there's a lot of people out there who genuinely don't understand that leaving this feedback to the Bandai teams are very important. I don't believe I brought this up earlier, but one of the biggest reasons that I think this feedback is really good for us to leave regardless is because of local co-op, right? Or in terms of like local 1v1s. That was not even planned for them to add, but because of the amount of feedback that us as their player base left out to the team, they actually retroactively decided to add that to the game itself, albeit only in the hyperbolic time chamber. But because of our feedback for that, which I would say is honestly one of the most important things, having that, like, if you're talking about like a BT3 sequel, like having the local 1v1 is really huge in that aspect. So not having that ability at first would actually be really crazy, man. But I am glad that they actually decided to add that in the future, which is really good. Now, again, in terms of final criticisms for the game that I may have, at this point for me personally, it is a little nitpicky. I mean, a lot of people want the models to be more buff. A lot of people feel like, you know, like what I was talking about with the actual characters like screen should be kind of squished in together. I feel like, you know, there's certain things, like I saw Janemba's ultimate specifically. I was looking at it, I was like, you know, it kind of sucks he doesn't have the flames around him like he does in the movie, which, to be fair, that is because he, like, sliced open Goku's ki blast and the flames were kind of around him. And that is, you know, I think I was like, oh, I wish it looked better because it looks kind of empty. Then I got a comment where it's like, oh my god, goodness, you're basically like, oh, you're complaining, you're nitpicking. And it's like, bro, it's not even complaining or nitpicking, it's just me leaving a comment at things. It's gone to that point, right? There's, you know, I think some things mechanic wise, I think Revenge Counter is honestly not really looking that great of a mechanic to me. I think Revenge Counter has a lot of different ways that it could be countered, at least based off of the gameplay I've seen. You could do a step in and avoid it. You could do super perception and avoid it. It looks like it might be pretty easily readable, but I guess we won't know for sure until the actual game does release, right? You know, beams, I think a lot of issue that people are having with the game aesthetically is the actual beams of the game itself and how they look kind of small and they don't look, you know, like super, like, you know, some of these beams should honestly be bigger compared to the sizes that they actually currently are in the game and stuff like that, right? At the end of the day, I just want to kind of talk about how this game is not perfect, and whilst I think this game is still really, really good, there are avenues for it to be fixed. This is me just talking on the fly, so I could have forgotten one or two things. Let me know if I missed anything that you guys feel like should be fixed in the comments below. Thanks y'all for watching. Again, we are all still super excited for Dragon Ball Sparking Zero. I am so ready. Thanks y'all for listening until the end. If you did go ahead and do so. And I guess I'll catch you guys in the next video.